Coming up on CyberCrime.
So by using a skimmer or handheld wedge, as they call it, they can actually read the mag stripe and defeat that kind of security feature.
It's a crime called skimming, swiping the stripe off a credit card, and then using the account information to make counterfeit cards. It happens in an instant. We'll show you where it's being done and what you need to do to protect yourself in a CyberCrime special.
CyberCrime is brought to you by Symantec.
Hi, we're back with plenty to tell you about. In CyberCrime news this week, a man known on the internet as Slave Master is suspected of murder. Convicted hacker Kevin Mitnick speaks out. And, of course, we'll have the latest developments in the Microsoft case. The details later in the show. First, let's turn our attention to a special report on skimming. Now, to understand skimming, you have to back up a few years. It wasn't so long ago a store took an impression of your credit card, and to prevent against fraud, you ripped up the carbons. Then, in the early 80s, the credit card industry added a magnetic stripe to the back of your card. And by the mid-90s, to improve security even more, the credit card companies added a unique 3- to 5-digit code to the stripe. Stealing or skimming. That code is the subject of this week's Consumer Alert.
Nowadays, you swipe at the restaurant, you swipe at the store, you even swipe at the gas station. But what if someone swipes a swipe?
So basically, in the old days, for credit card fraud, all you need to capture was the account number right here, the account holder's name, and the expiration date. Today, what they've done is they've also added a 3-digit encoded number that's not present anywhere in the front of this card to the mag stripe.
And it's that encoded number in the magnetic stripe that's the key to counterfeiters. 18-year veteran U.S. Secret Service agent Greg Regan should know. He heads up the agency's Financial Crimes Division.
So by using a skimmer or a handheld wedge, as they call it, they can actually read the mag stripe and defeat that kind of security feature. It's basically in, out, you've now compromised this account number. It takes maybe a second and a half.
This skimmer can hold over 200 accounts, and at an average loss of $3,100 per card, it can wreak havoc. Magnetic stripe readers are openly sold on the web because they do have legitimate purposes like at trade shows and hotels. But the problem is how easily they can be used to skim a card. After that, it's just a matter of dumping the numbers onto a laptop, emailing them off, and manufacturing the counterfeit cards.
Yes, I have noticed that the individuals using counterfeit credit cards are purchasing jewelry, perfume, Rolex watches, as well as electronics.
Paul Morrissey with the Secret Service San Francisco field office says skimmers primarily target 3 places.
The points of compromise are basically in retail stores, restaurants, as well as gas stations.
The skim artist tries to recruit people in the service industry, offering about $25 to $30 for each stolen card. One waiter recently arrested in New York City had this skimmer velcroed to the inside of his jacket. And no waiter needed here. These ATMs were all rigged to strip the stripe off cards. Oh, the machine still worked. The skimmers were just placed over the slit where you insert your card.
We've recovered as an agency probably about 4 dozen skimming devices.
Greg James has seen it all. In charge of the Special Operations Branch at the Financial Crimes Division, he's watched the technology get more and more portable.
This device was used by the criminals probably about 2 years ago before we got to the smaller devices.
It reveals the mag stripe contents, that is, the credit card number, the name, and the embedded code.
This is one that you could purchase off the internet. It holds, a good 30, 40, 50 numbers, depending on, there's different versions and bigger versions. This is the smallest device that we've seen. These are the ones that we're seeing from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, down into Florida. So this is a popular model within the U.S.
And once you've downloaded the numbers, you can send the information from anywhere. Consider the case out of New York City, where a sales clerk took a skimming device like this one, hot-wired it to a Palm 7 with internet access. At that point, the sales clerk could have sent the information anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds.
Wireless handheld devices have changed the rules. Skimming is now a highly lucrative international crime.
We'll actually find a card compromised here in San Francisco, and it can be used in 15 states throughout the country and over in China, Taiwan, and parts of Europe within 48 hours of the compromise. They've now compromised your card, and you won't even know your card's been compromised until you get your bill 30 or 60 days later.
A recent raid on one international organized gang yielded guns and skimmers.
From my own personal experience over the last 5 years, I've seen several cases that exceed $25 million in terms of actual fraud loss.
James Tomczak has watched many of his local San Francisco cases go international.
Recent scenario where we were able to, working with our Canadian counterparts in Vancouver, seize a skimming device that was literally, from all outward appearances, a pager.
But it wasn't a pager at all. The tiny hollowed-out case had a slit across the top used to skim cards. Another skimming device even had an emergency exit.
It had a button on the top, and what we called it was a panic button, for lack of a better word. And if you hold that down, it would erase all the information.
But the U.S. Secret Service has developed technology to recover that data. In fact, agents in the field can immediately view the contents of just about any skimming device with what's called the universal download.
We get around any of the passwords or any of the security features that the criminal has put into the device to keep us from extracting it. So we go right to where the information is being stored.
It would appear the embedded code in the mag stripe isn't doing the trick. But perhaps the next security feature will take the swipe out of crime.
You're never going to have a technological fix that will wipe out fraud. What we hope to do is every time you put a technological fix in, it slows it down and it curtails it to a certain point.
The U.S. Secret Service has been investigating credit card fraud since 1982. And while the agency is often thought of in terms of protection, it's been doing investigations well before that, going back to 1865. According to the Secret Service, skimming is the #1 problem in bank fraud today. This story has definitely changed the way I use my credit card, but I'm not sure anything is going to stop us from shifting to a cashless society. What do you think? Are you inclined to change the way that you pay? From now on, maybe you'll try to use more cash when making purchases. That's A. Here's an interesting twist. Perhaps you think shopping online is a safer alternative, and you plan on doing more of that. That's B. Or, if you don't plan on changing your paying habits at all, select C. You can cast your vote on our website at cybercrime.com. But before you make that decision, let me give you some more food for thought. When we return from the break, Jim Tomczak with the San Francisco U.S. Secret Service Field Office gives us an exclusive interview on the war against skimming. Find out the facts on what you can do to flip the skimmers. Next. Welcome back to our special on skimming, that is using handheld devices to steal the account information contained in the magnetic stripe on a credit card. I'm here with U.S. Secret Service Special Agent Jim Tomczak, and you met him in the piece. He is the #2 guy in the San Francisco field office. I appreciate having you here, Jim.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. The thing that we have to address first off is now everyone knows about the problem. Knowledge is power, but they're probably scared. I don't want them to feel helpless in any way whatsoever. What do you suggest? What does the Secret Service suggest about staying safe?
There are 3 things we would suggest. 1, check your statements as you get them. Don't let them build up. When you receive a statement, simply go through the transactions, make sure all of those transactions are transactions that you engaged in or you authorized. The other thing, do a credit check on yourself. You can do this as often as twice a year. Not only is this going to alert you to the fact that one of your accounts may have been skimmed, it may let you know that someone has assumed your identity by
Which
some
is
other
something we cover all the time. You must observe that.
Serious problem. The third thing, simple, but simply try to track where your card goes.
But how realistic is that, right? I mean, you're having a meal and people are going to just walk away with your card.
Not always appropriate, but sometimes easy to do. Many of the transactions you use your card for are processed directly in front of you. Simply watch what happens with your card. I agree. If you're sitting in a restaurant, you just had a nice dinner and a bottle of wine, unlikely that you're going to be able to follow where that card's actually processed.
Yeah, no, it's very true. There's something else that we observe with this type of scheme, and that is they recruit people, waiters, people in the service industry, but the people higher up, the people who are doing the recruiting, anonymous. Sometimes they're hard to follow, right?
Exactly. Those persons, the persons that run the organization, are going to recruit people who may not know who they are. Their only contact with them may be through a pager device. They may only know the person providing them with the skimming device by a nickname.
Right.
The parallels are directly relevant to narcotics trafficking, where you may find people that are involved in the actual skimming are the equivalent of the pusher on the street.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge problem. Can you get your head around how big the problem is?
Hard to say. It's really difficult to estimate the dimensions of the problem today.
Sure.
It's growing. It's growing daily. Our reports would indicate that it's becoming an enormous problem. I'll frame it in terms of my own personal experience.
Right.
Have extensive involvement with one case that involves a large, sophisticated organized crime group that we know one skimming case that they're involved in has resulted in excess of $100 million of fraud.
$100 million in one case. And what you're also observing is, and I remember talking about this with some of the others in the Secret Service, violent crimes, this isn't necessarily violent, but they're associated with those who are in violent crimes and these international organized crimes.
Absolutely. The people controlling the skimming activity, those persons who are at the high end of the distribution of these devices, are people who are involved in a number of other crimes. They're organized crime groups, traditional and non-traditional organized crime groups that are involved in narcotics trafficking, extortion, and crimes of violence.
Yeah, we saw that in the story. We also saw that you guys are making some progress. There's this universal download, and you're working with the mag strike. But there are other things down the pike, right? We should feel comforted that there are some things that are being worked on.
Today, the service is working very closely with the financial industry to try to develop countermeasures, technology to be placed in your card that will frustrate those persons trying to compromise your account.
Right, so there's a few different things that you guys are working on. The problem with that, though, of course, we talked about this too, is that you have to have the whole industry adopt it before it becomes something
clearly
real.
It's an industry problem. We work with the industry, and hopefully they'll work well together as well.
And also, I know that you guys are expanding the Secret Service, what was classically known as that, to work with this problem and everything else that you're dealing with.
Rapidly and dramatically. Not only are we training our workforce to deal with these crimes, we're increasing the size of our workforce to address the fact that it is a big problem and getting bigger all the time. The numbers, we're hiring hundreds of agents. In terms of percentages, the size of the Secret Service is actually increasing by greater than 30%. A large number of those agents are going to be addressing skimming and related financial crimes.
Great. Well, Jim, thank you very much for being here. Our viewers are very grateful for having you here. And we'll continue to follow this, and we'll have you back if we have some more information.
Look forward to it.
Okay. Thanks again. Stay with us. We still have much more ahead on cybercrime. Investigators are trying to figure out if a man known on the web as Slave Master is a serial killer. Details in our news and review. That's next.
We begin with a landmark decision in the Microsoft case. After more than 2 years, the court ruled on Wednesday, break the company in two. One overseeing the Windows operating system, the other all applications including Internet Explorer. Microsoft will appeal, and the court says the company may remain intact until that process is exhausted. Which federal court will hear the appeal is unclear. Microsoft would prefer the case first go to the Federal Court of Appeals, but under a rarely used federal law, the appeal can go directly to the Supreme Court, the government's preferred path.
If Judge Jackson grants that motion and certifies the case, then the case will be docketed in the Supreme Court like any other Supreme Court case, and the proceedings will take place. The court has the option of granting plenary review, or if it decides it can remand it to the Court of Appeals. If it grants plenary review, I believe the case can be argued reasonably early next term and brought to a conclusion early in 2001.
As the months have gone on since this case was filed, I think that people can see how competitive this business is and how that decision to support the Internet made sense. To have such an unprecedented set of rulings here not only breaking up the company, but saying that our intellectual property should be given away to other people. These things just are unheard of and really don't fit the world that consumers are seeing out there.
Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson says he's inclined to agree with the government's appeal to the Supreme Court. If Microsoft is split in two, the companies are banned from rejoining for 10 years. In other news, investigators discovered the bodies of 5 women in Kansas and Missouri, their bodies stuffed in 55-gallon barrels. A man known on the Internet as Slave Master is a suspect, but no charges have been filed. 56-year-old John E. Robinson is currently charged with sexually assaulting 2 other women. Police say he developed relationships with those women on the web, then set up meetings. Robinson's attorney says he will plead innocent to those charges. Kevin Mitnick, notorious hacker, has become Kevin Mitnick, speech advocate. He's heading to court to challenge the terms of his probation that forbid him from talking about computers.
I accepted an offer from Content Bill, which is their online site for Brill's content, to be a columnist on a monthly basis. And when I made that proposal to the probation department, they declined to allow me to participate, construing that if I write on computer-related topics that it's computer consulting. So at this point in time, Stephen Brill retained Floyd Abrams, a First Amendment attorney, and he recently, I think just yesterday, filed an amicus curiae, or friend of court brief, to support our position that as the conditions are being interpreted by the probation department, they're crossing constitutional boundaries in abrogating my First Amendment right to freedom of expression.
Mitnick says hackers are the best way for companies to learn about security threats. Meantime, one security company is reporting hackers are planning a distributed denial-of-service attack using more than 2,000 zombie computers. Zombie computers are machines that are remotely controlled and compromised without the owner's knowledge. 2 major antivirus companies that we spoke to are downplaying the threat. And still ahead on CyberCrime.
Big Brother is watching, and your privacy is gone.
CPA and economist Selwyn Gerber addresses protecting your money and assets online. This week's chaos theory is next. But wait, what year did the following events take place? Hackers replaced the homepage of the U.S. Air Force website with obscenities. Janet Jackson becomes the highest paid musician, and Britain is alarmed by the outbreak of mad cow disease. Was it 1996, 1997, or 1998? I'll be back with the answer after the break. Now back to this week's timeline. Hackers break into the Air Force website, Janet Jackson becomes the highest paid musician, and Britain battles mad cow disease. If you guessed 1996, you're right. Well, the questions for our C3 panel are pouring in, and we love it, so keep sending them our way. This week, Jeremy from York Springs, Pennsylvania asks, would it be legal to shut down websites that have destructive software posted for downloading? This is an excellent question for Scott Charney, a well-known and well-respected cybercrime authority. Prior to his present job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, Charney was the chief of the Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section at the Department of Justice. Jeremy, here's Scott Charney with your answer.
First of all, the mere posting of malicious code without more is not an offense. In any event, federal law prohibits knowingly transmitting any code, program, or instruction with intent to cause damage without authority. Generally speaking, the actor's good intent is not a defense, as the law does not recognize vigilantism. If you believe the website is involved in criminal activity, law enforcement should be notified.
Thanks for that answer, Scott and Jeremy, for the question. And if you want one of these, and we know you do, keep sending those C3 questions. If we use it on air, the hat is yours. As for the rest of you, take a few seconds and check out the C3 panel you helped create. You'll find it at our website at cybercrime.com. While you're there, give our security scanner a try. Just click on the icon at the top right-hand corner of the page. The virus check will scan your computer for the top 5 viruses, like the Love Bug, the New Killer Resume, and Pretty Park. And the Security Analyzer will search your computer to make sure you have up-to-date antivirus programs. And finally, turning now to chaos theory, we've been hearing about Big Brother since George Orwell's book 1984, but not even Orwell envisioned the wired world we live in today. Has Big Brother taken over the internet, swallowing privacy in the process? Selwyn Gerber with Crime Global, a company specializing in asset protection, says most definitely. Here's his chaos theory.
Big Brother is watching, and your privacy is gone. One of the sad realities of the new internet-based economy is that everything about you, the viewer, is available to me on the internet for just a few dollars. There are a number of sites that have sprung up which provide detailed surveillance, a lot of information that years ago would have taken a long, long time to get and is now easily available. How do you, the consumer, reclaim your privacy? And how do you enhance your own sense of security? It can be done, and our suggestion is as follows. Firstly, try not to use your credit card on the web. It's far easier to do paper transactions, mail checks wherever possible. Secondly, speak to your lawyer about how your assets are held. The title of ownership is critical in terms of making it easily traceable, attachable. And for those of you with substantial wealth, we strongly advocate an offshore structure providing ownership, privacy, and complete safeguarding from attachment by what we call the creditors and predators of the world.
Okay, so what do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting chaos theory, but I do not agree with a lot of points that Selwyn brings up. And I think to say that privacy is gone, I think it's too broad, and I don't agree with it.
Right.
And to say that a paper transaction is possibly safer, well, we saw with skimming that that's not really the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what the whole story was about in skimming, that things happen in the real world, too. So online isn't the solution. Privacy is not lost, so you shouldn't walk away with that impression. And also, I'm not going to subscribe to taking all your money and putting it in an offshore account. So we basically agree
that we disagree
on everything that he said.
Pretty much everything.
Pretty much everything that he said. Okay, that does it for another episode of CyberCrime. We're glad you could join us. And hey, keep in touch. Drop us an email at cybercrime@zdtv.com and chat with us on Monday between 6 and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And don't forget, for all the latest news and information and all the stories we've covered, go to our website, cybercrime.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.